We're called to order. It's a great day in Kershaw County, an all-American county that's being stressed to the limit, and we're going to stand up to the challenge. I want to first say we've got our second of two e-meetings with a call-in and visual capability. On the phone, we have Tom Gardner. We're awaiting a call from Ben Connell. Sue Sugart's on the phone from the hospital. Thank you, Sue. Tom Morgan and Ken DeBose, our attorney, are on the phone. And present in the room is from my left, your right, Mr. Jones, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Snodgrass. Off the picture and off camera, our clerk of county, Mary Siegler, Administrator Vic Carpenter, our great EMS, Gerald, Danny Templer. The sheriff is here. Thank you, Sheriff. And Lauren Reeder, and without whom we would not have a meeting, our IT. This is another test for you. Thank you for all coming. By now, you're familiar with why we're doing e-meetings, and I won't explain, but I will explain why we're having a call meeting. As Mr. Jones urged me to say, it's time to keep the team together. And I thank Jimmy for urging us to have this meeting, to share information, to convey the seriousness of what we're doing, to stiffen our resolve, and keep our people informed. The greatest people on the planet Earth, the American people, are better and stronger when they know what's going on. This is not to alarm anyone. And as I said the other day, this is like football. We in South Carolina have the best football teams in the world, and we love the offense, but right now we're in a defense mode. Washing our hands, social distancing, our churches, our social organizations, our metropolitan organizations, and a host of others of you have complied to stay in small groups and stay at a distance. Others of you have asked for a more aggressive stance. Some have asked for that, and these are learned, well-meaning people to stay at home and shelter in place. This meeting is not about that. So those of you watching or dialing in, this is not about an effort to go to shelter in place. You know that Charleston has done that and Columbia is considering it. Others, well-meaning and also well-informed, like major businesses and small businesses, are asking that not be done. I want to first be clear that this body doesn't have the authority to do it, and only the governor can do that and give the power to the sheriff to enforce. And the governor also knows what that means to the businesses, that whatever we do, we've never done this before, but as my sheriff says to us, there's no do-overs. What we do has eternal consequences for our people, and we need to take every step as well-informed as we can be, helping one another, such as the great Kershaw Health Hospital is helping us to learn from each other and moving ahead. But when we figure something out, we better be agile, take the best advice, and act where prudent. Number one, our small businesses are hurting, and Mr. Tucker will go on about that in a moment. Mr. Jones has been very helpful on that. And secondly, I must report a grievous loss to my family and to myself, my childhood friend, Jack West, a kind, smart gentleman, a family man that came from a family that gave so much, not just to Kershaw County, but to the state, a former governor, and his wife Lois was on the board of Winthrop University. And Mr. West brought us ATEC, which we now know as the Willard Center. A great and grievous loss for me personally. I'm wearing his colors today of the Citadel College. The football team are on my bow tie today in honor of my friend. And I remember the words of 2 Timothy 4. God did not give us a spirit of being timid, but of power, of love, and self-discipline. So help us all to learn from our friend, my friend Jack, and I ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Amen. And that's for all our people suffering and not yet sick or recovering. We are now called to order. I ask our Councilman Snodgrass to lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Those here, please stand.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we come to you today, Lord, in these times of great uncertainty. But even in this uncertainty, Lord, we confess to you, O Lord, that you are certain. We echo the words of the psalmist when we confess, Lord, that you are our rock, you are our fortress, and you are our very help in time of need. And so, Lord, we come to you these days in which there is certainly a very physical problem. There's a physical problem that we are facing, but Lord, we also know that there are spiritual ways to, Lord, to go about this. And so, Lord, I think about those who are physically on the front lines of this virus. I think about those who are working in our hospitals right now. Lord, I pray that you would lift them up. Lord, that you would give them strength. And Lord, that you would give them perseverance. Lord, I pray the same prayer for those within our emergency management divisions. Lord, the dispatchers, the first responders, Father, the law enforcement, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would lift them up and, Lord, that you would give them strength. Lord, I pray for the supply chain of not only our county, but our country and our world. Lord, I pray that you would be with those who grow, who manufacture, who put together, who package, and who deliver, Lord, vital supplies that help us fight this pandemic. And so, Lord, I pray that you will be with and in that process. Lord, there are so many physical things that are on the front lines of this. And so, Lord, help us, whether it is people of faith in churches or those of us in government, Lord, help us to support those who are on the front lines. Lord, I get this image of the Israelites and when they were in battle one moment where Moses was up on the rock, and as long as Moses held his hands up, Lord, the battle belonged to the Israelites. And so, Lord, there are those who have their hands up on the front lines. There are those who have their hands up, Lord, fighting this thing. And so, Lord, help us. Help us to keep those hands up in whatever way possible, Lord, whether it's from government support or from the support of churches and other organizations in our community. Help us to come together to keep those hands up as we fight this and as we come together for this and through this. Lord, I pray that you would be with the family of Jack West, Lord, this great gentleman who has had such an impact on all of us, and pray that you would comfort and peace to that family. Lord, as your word reminds us, we're going to rejoice in all things. We're not going to be anxious, but in all things, bring all things to you in prayer and confession. Lord, we love you, and we pray this in the strong and the mighty name of Jesus Christ. And all God's people said,
Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you very much.
I think Ben is on and he had mute.
I will. And just moving on here, for the record, Sue Sugar at Kershaw Health Hospital, well, I could hear her saying it over the telephone. I ask you all to go on mute, though, nevertheless. Thank you, Sue, and thank you for joining us. We move now to the adoption of the agenda. It's a single item. It's a call meeting, and therefore it's very focused on an update. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move, Mr. Chairman, having been the one to ask for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones, indeed, and I congratulate you again for having us here. Second, please.
Second.
Second from Mr. Tucker. Any comments? None. We'll move to a vote. I'll ask first for those remote. Tom Gardner. Can you say aye? Unmute first. Mr. Connell?
Aye.
You got Mr. Gardner and Mr. Connell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've been on the whole time, but for whatever reason, I don't think you could hear me earlier, but I vote yes.
Thank you, and thank you very much, gentlemen. If you'll go back to mute, and then we'll take a physical vote here. All those in favor, raise your hand. And it's unanimous. The agenda is approved. The first item and the only item is new business with an update, and we turn to Vic Carpenter, who's done so much to keep us safe. Sir, Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, as it is a single item on the agenda, which is an update on the actions taken by entities in Kershaw County, and I would like to ask that Ms. Sue Sugar from Kershaw Health knowing that time is critical in supply for her if she could go first.
Sue, over to you.
Thank you, Julian and Vic. I really appreciate the invitation, and I certainly appreciate the cooperation that the hospital is experiencing and the teamwork just with the county, with our public health officials here locally and at the state, and really the hospital community altogether. I'll just give you a few updates and then take any questions if you have them. Just to give you an update on where we stand, our hospital has been prioritizing our inpatient testing with our DHEC state lab because we were experiencing about a one-day turnaround with the DHEC state lab, and it's just really important when we have inpatients who are under investigation for COVID in their placement and care, and also in the amount of personal protective equipment that we use for those patients, that we get those answers as soon as possible. So we have been using LabCorp in our physician practices, and we also have access to Quest, which are the two leading or largest third-party testing sites. And those turnaround times were running about 4 days, but now are up to 7 as amount of testing, not just here in Kershaw County in our state, but across the nation, has greatly increased. We, as far as our response here, you probably know that we created a dedicated COVID unit. It's not an intensive care, it is a medical floor, and that was with a 12-bed capacity. Last night we expanded because we had reached that capacity over the weekend, and now we have up to 36 beds that we have dedicated for medical COVID patients. Our ICU is not as easy to expand ICU and ICU capacity. So we have, through a lot of collaboration, been able to increase our ventilator supply. You've probably read that in other countries as well, that as well as our own, that ventilator availability for this disease is really high. So we now have more than doubled our ventilator capacity, but we have not expanded our ICU capacity. And that will be today, as I report to you, the biggest constraint we have here at Kershaw Health. So when we talk about the things we've done on the inpatient side to be able to allow Kershaw Health to treat as many of these patients as we can who require hospitalization locally, I know you all realize that there's a finite number on all of those things. And it's not just true of Kershaw Health, it's true of every hospital everywhere. We just happen to be a couple of weeks ahead of most hospitals, but our resources are going to be finite. And that's why I will say to you that the big variable that's going to affect the patients that we need to care for is the transmission and how successfully we can reduce the transmission. So we are preaching the stay-at-home mantra, and we are asking our employees and families and our community to do the same, to follow, to take seriously the social distancing, and stay home when you can stay home. I shared an article on my personal Facebook page. I'm going to close with this quote. It was from the director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Francis Collins, and he said, "We're going to be in this space for more time than we will like, and we're here, and we are doing everything we can. We are just asking for everyone's cooperation to help slow the spread."
Thank you, Sue. Further comments?
If I may.
Yeah, Mr. Jones has a comment,
Thank
Sue.
you. I'd just like to say something about Kershaw Health. My personal feelings, or what I know to be true, actually. Dr. Holstrom, working around the clock in the evening, coming in all times of the day on her days off, Stacy Collier working around the clock. Scott Bernhausen, infectious control, working around the clock, making sure we are safe and following guidelines. Sue Shugart at the hospital around the clock, making sure we can get what we need, even working us in on her busy, busy schedule here today. And thank you so much for that, Sue. Cindy Blanchard, manning the emergency preparedness and making sure we know what we have and when we need things around the clock. Dr. Olatussi, I hope I pronounced that correctly, working around the clock, tracking the virus and watching trends, working with families. And you've got April Walker, chief nurse with the ER, working around the clock, doing everything she can to be there to support us. And you have Phyllis Hames, our occupational health nurse, working around the clock to make sure the staff at the hospital are monitored and treated. You know, and all staff at the hospital who are coming in and working long hours to make sure our community is cared for. And all these people are working to keep the community safe. No hours are too long, and they are there every day. And I'm going to say this too. I think we should say something about how the community has come out to support the hospital. I've gotten information that they've had food delivered and all sorts of things, and it has been great. I just want to salute, tip my hat, and say thank you to all of you folks at Kershaw Health. You're remarkable, and you're heroes.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Other comments? All right. Very good. Sue, I join with that. I'm sure everyone here does too. I know you're busy. I'll just tell you this. Don't call Sue at midnight and not expect a response. I called her last night and didn't get past the second ring. We have a great team, and we have a long way to go, as she said. As Sue said, this is only the beginning. We got a long way to go. It's a long football game. We're in the defense right now. I would also add our EMS, and I'm sure no one else would object to that, and our sheriff. With that, I think we can move back to you, Mr. Carpenter, to control the agenda. And Sue, thank you for coming. I know you're busy, and you can drop off if you wish.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, members of council, I think it's
Bring the microphone over.
Mr. Chairman, members, I think it's appropriate to just move straight over, and I've asked Mr. Blanchard to give us an update of the front line from our EMS and public safety.
Thank you, Council, for having me speak today. I just want to say thanks for Council and also the leadership that has been shown by the county administration so far in this event. That is much appreciated. Brief overview. We are currently at 64 cases in Kershaw County of varying degrees. Some have been discharged from the hospital and continue to recover at home. Of course, every day brings about new cases. From what I understand today, we're sitting at an additional 5, bringing us up to a total of 64. These cases are located throughout the county. It is not just the Camden proper area, even though Camden proper is the majority of the cases. It has touched every community in our county. As the days go by, the numbers are going to become less relevant because they're just going to continue to increase. We are in the acceleration phase of the pandemic. That's exactly what DHEC calls it, the acceleration phase. And DHEC continues to project continued community spread with some check marks for like the first week of April being around 2,000 cases statewide. And then the first week of May accelerating up to 8,000 cases statewide. All of this is available on the DHEC website. As far as EMS, I want to talk to you a little bit about EMS operations, and then we'll also talk about the EMD side. From an EMS standpoint, we have had 4 team members that have had to serve some period of time for quarantine, 3 due to Kershaw County operations and 1 due to Chester County operations. She is a volunteer firefighter and unfortunately was called and was a high-risk exposure. All 4 of those are doing well. Our 3 have actually returned to duty, so those are all good. We have 3 crew members that are currently out sick and are awaiting test results. No specific exposures have been targeted for those individuals, but they are still out for an extended period of time based on the fact that currently it looks like a 7-day projection time from private labs, and now the DHEC lab is up to 24 hours. So we're kind of struggling with that. Daily operations, we were very lucky, EMS. We recognized the potential impact to the supply chain early on based on some of our communications with partners throughout the state. The Hospital Association being one of those that gave us a heads up. So we were actually able to start stockpiling some PPE prior to the event happening, and we are currently sitting with 60 days of PPE. Jim Edge, the Deputy Director of EMS, has been very strong in making sure that our supply chain is up and running. We've developed COOP plans to ensure continued functions of service in case of incapacitation, illness, or death. That was one of the things that we did initially, and we went 4 deep. Any organization that may be watching this that does not have a COOP plan in place, I would strongly recommend it as this continues moving forward. Early on, we limited the number of potential contacts. We worked with fire services across the county to make sure that we were not putting too many individuals on scenes to potential exposure. So we started limiting our first responders basically due to the fact of lack of PPE for other organizations, and to make sure that those that absolutely need it can maintain it. We have established disaster medical rationing of PPE. Even though we have 60 days worth of supply, that is based on the rationing of PPE. Our paramedics are allowed to, are actually issued an N95 mask, one every 24-hour shift, unless they come in contact with a known patient of COVID, at which time their mask is changed out. Surgical masks have also been put on ration per truck just to make sure that we have enough to maintain, hopefully beyond the 60 days. We are, strict decon procedures have been put in place for our stations and our trucks. Each station is deconned with the Clorox 360 system that we have to disinfect that station once a week. Each truck as needed, but it's a minimum of 1 time a day. We have adapted protocols, and a lot of people don't recognize that some of our medical protocols that we do in the back of the truck had to be adapted to fit COVID. If you're doing an aerosolized treatment, you're actually aerosolizing the COVID. So we're restricting some of our breathing treatments. The use of CPAP has been restricted to the worst of cases, and also we're limiting the number of intubations that we do in the field. Medical screening has been placed on all employees when they come to work. We check for signs and symptoms, and we do a temperature check. All of that is logged, and if needed, it can be reported off to DHEC. As far as our volume, we have actually seen a slight decrease in EMS volume since the kickoff of, since the first patient was diagnosed in Kershaw County. We contribute that to the stay at home, only go to the hospital if absolutely needed, to that message that Lauren Reeder has been instrumental in pushing out for us. Our out-of-county transports continue to be 12% of the total volume. I bring that up because as this continues to impact other counties, we may need to end up limiting the number of times we send patients out of county, but we'll keep you guys updated on that as we move forward. 3% increase in refusals. Again, I think patients are calling us, we're coming out, we're basically checking vital signs, making sure they don't have a fever, and then when we offer transport, they're like, no thanks, I'm going to shelter right here and be good. That pretty much covers the EMS side. From ESF 8 functions, the public health functions that I've assumed with EMD, we've concentrated our attention on 3 areas: protect and support the Kershaw County team and its mission, protect and support Kershaw Health, and support public and private health entities during this event. By what we've done in those 4 areas is we've reached out to all skilled nursing facilities in the county, gotten an idea of where their PPE levels are at, and we've supported them accordingly. We've also gone over their emergency operation plans to discuss if you do have a sick patient, signs and symptoms, how to maintain that individual on your property, as opposed to transporting them to the hospital. Again, trying to keep some of the weight off of Kershaw Health if we can.
Bless you.
I have to say that all 5 of the skilled facilities in Kershaw County have been fantastic to work with. We've also adapted our response to those areas to prevent cross-contamination by asking them, working with them in conjunction to create a policy to where EMS teams do not actually enter the nursing homes. They bring the patients out to us if at all possible.
Wow.
Again, just limiting the cross-contamination. You do not want to feed the monster, is basically the way
Right.
we are looking at it. Again, we have met and supplied all public and some private entities in the county with PPE. We've worked with Camden and Lugoff Fire Departments to get them supplied, the Sheriff's Office, Camden PD, as well as Bethune and Elgin PD to make sure that they have masks, gloves, and stuff of that type nature. We have received and distributed items from the Strategic National Stockpile. We have supplied Kershaw Health with one rather large shipment. We are actually poised to be able to do it again, just waiting on their confirmation to accept what we want to send over. Springdale Health, Kershaw, Pinedale, Morningside, the Colony at Old Camden, as well as the Community Care Clinic, Food for the Soul, First Priority Transport, and Low Country Urgent Care has received supplies from the National Strategic Stockpile that were delivered. We continue to work with EMD, County Administrator, Assistant County Administrator, to develop future plans as we move through this event. And we continue to share what we have learned through success and failure with other agencies throughout the state to give them a better understanding of what we've been dealing with. As the chairman said, we're actually 2 weeks ahead of the majority of other counties. That concludes my report.
Gentlemen, Mr. Bozard.
The exact number of outside of the city limits, I'm not 100% sure. But I can say that the majority so far have been inside the city of Camden.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you. Mr. Blanchard, I have a little concern on what our frontliners are doing and their exposure and not being able to get tests back for 7 days when DHEC can do it in 24 hours now. What can we do as elected officials and staff, county staff, to speed that up? Because if we don't keep you guys well, you can't keep us well. It's the old cliche, I can't help you unless I help myself.
Absolutely. Since the 3 sick individuals that I mentioned earlier, the 3 showing some signs and symptoms were tested, the state has enacted a first responder priority testing.
Okay.
And again, I want to commend Vic Carpenter on his stance with state EMD and DHEC on making that happen.
Thank you.
If I may,
Yeah, Jimmy, go
thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Chairman. Sort of relating to what you just asked, Gerald Blanchard, it made me think of Phyllis Haynes at the hospital, occupational health nurse. As the staff there are trying to protect and save the public, she's there, making sure staff in the hospital are monitored and treated. And I think that's what you're saying. It's all about monitoring when it comes to your staff.
Absolutely. When they come in the mornings, everyone receives just a thorough check. Make sure that there's no signs and symptoms, they're not complaining of anything, and we also do a temperature check also.
Perfect.
Let me give priority right now to the call-ins, and I'll get to you, Mr. Snodgrass. Mr. Connell or Mr. Gardner, if you want to enter in, or any questions, just signify.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think the question.
Okay, Mr. Gardner, go ahead.
I don't have any questions. Yep. I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Connell.
Mr. Chairman, just want to express gratitude to all those who are helping and participating, especially Kershaw Health. I know she's already hopped off, but to Gerald and everybody involved, we really appreciate it, and we're here to support you. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. That was Mr. Snodgrass. Dave?
Gerald, thanks for all your work, man, and getting us prepared, and I love hearing that. It seems like we're ahead of the curve as far as our supply of PPE and things like that. So that supply that you have, does the fire service have access to that, or they have their own supply so they're ready when they have to answer a call?
Correct. Actually, prior to the delivery of the Strategic National Stockpile, we had already pushed some of our supplies over to all fire agencies and some police departments, sheriff's office primarily. Since the Strategic National Stockpile came in, we have pushed even more supplies out. To be honest with you, though, we're still, based on conversations with the City of Camden Fire, Lugoff Fire, and County Fire, we're still not in a position to really feel comfortable opening up all first response calls again. In the spirit of trying to limit the number of potential exposures, we're still allowing EMS to respond, and if necessary, then contact first responders for assistance, whether it be for driving or patient care issues.
But I'm assuming they have some supply in case your trucks on the North Central are all tied up and you still get a call.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, they do.
Out.
We've made sure that they have ample supply.
Good deal. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Mr. Jones?
Appreciate it.
This may be a little off course, but I do want to say it. You know, this county hasn't always been united in our political days with budgets and things like that, but I want to assure the people in Kershaw County that this county council is committed and we're united in supporting to fight this demon, this virus, and to make sure, which we will, that we succeed and come out victorious. And Mr. Chairman, I have to say this. I appreciate when I called you the other night and said, I think the county needs an update. You didn't second guess me. You didn't quabble with me. You said, absolutely, we're going to do it. And you got it together. I think this meeting is important. I think we need to keep the public updated. I'm very impressed, Joe, with what y'all are doing. And I can't tell you just how much it means to not only myself, but the citizens of Kershaw County, because you guys are on the front line. But I also want to go back to when we talk about what really helps. You're not comfortable yet coming off and going back to full course. I agree with you. You know, we're still under the president's 15 days. You know, the 15 days, I think that ends in about 5 more days or something like that. So I just appreciate all the cooperation and all the work. And we can get back to the political sparring after this virus is dead and gone, and we will. But thank you, members of council, for working with me the way you have through this as well. I appreciate that.
Might be new beginnings, Mr. Jones. You never know.
I think that's it. I do want to ask you, just in the spirit of what Mr. Tucker said, what keeps you up at night, Gerald? Right now, what's on your mind?
Folks not abiding by the social distancing. If we don't control social distancing, then we're going to lose. Correct.
We're just going to go up the curve.
Correct.
Absolutely. It's not a stay-at-home policy. We don't have the authority to do that. But if people can show, as you heard me quote in Timothy, St. Timothy had it right with St. Paul, we were given a spirit of self-discipline. And let's exercise that. Are we ready to go, Mr. Bozard? Go right ahead.
First, from what I understand and what I've read, is it's more contagious than H1N1. And another misconception that I think a lot of people have is that they keep comparing the mortality rate of the flu, even H1N1, to COVID-19. The standard flu has a global fatality rate of somewhere around 0.7%. All right, so if you think about 1 million people getting the flu, 0.7%, what is that, mathematicians? Come on, help me out. But
70.
Right, but the COVID-19, its mortality rate now is between 2.7 and 3. And in certain areas, certain sects of the population, it's even greater than that. So now imagine that same 1 million people contracting COVID with a 3% fatality rate or mortality rate. You can see where the numbers are much greater. 0.7 to 3. So I would say the fact that it's a greater contagion and the higher mortality rate. It's not the flu.
Well, so far statistics isn't proving that. I mean, compared to the swine flu, that's why I'm asking. I'm trying to see where the panic is. That's what I'm trying to see.
I can help
believe.
you out.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Because I've gotten this question several times to me as well. First of all, I don't think you're comparing apples to apples.
Right.
And that's what Gerald was just trying to explain. Second of all, when you have H1N1 or even the flu, you show the symptoms, I can touch you and I won't be contaminated. This thing's invisible. We don't know where it's at. Someone can touch right here, I would dare touch it, and then I come up and lay my hand there, and then I got the bug. And then I don't know it, and then I can continue to spread it. Remember, I gave you statistics at last meeting. 4 out of 5 people are contaminating each other unknowingly. That's why they want the separation. So that's where the pandemic and the concern, and I don't want nobody to be panicky and all weird out, but I want you to be responsible. I want you to go about your day in a very responsible manner and keeping your social distance, making sure that you're doing your part. If you do your part, one individual do their part, the next individual, and the next thing you know, the team is strong and we're getting through this thing. The problem we have is people don't believe it's real. And that's a false narrative.
Well, the bottom line is still death, and statistically wise, the swine flu was way more deadly than what we've got now.
That's totally incorrect.
You don't know that because we ain't through this yet.
We're not here to debate that issue. I'm going to make a
No,
point
I'm
of
just
order.
trying to see where
I'm
he's
just gonna-
explaining this to us. I'd like to know
Yeah.
where it's coming from.
I'll make sure you get it from Sue Sugar. She sent us some material that she felt she wouldn't share here today because of time. But let's take that offline, and I'm prepared to accept the president and the governor's advice on this. It is 2 times more infectious and 10 times more deadly. And certainly for certain populations. So you're not old enough to know how to be in that population, Mr. Bozard.
I understand that. Thank you.
Well, let me. I'll labor to get you the information that is causing all of us so much concern. Other comments? Gerald, thank you. Vic, back to you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, then I'll just kind of give you a wrap-up of what else is going on in the county. You've heard from the medical side, and it's important that you hear that. I also want to maybe make sure that in hearing that you understand some of the things that you heard. And we said that right now there's a total of 64 cases in Kershaw County, as 1 new case is being reported officially by DHEC today. But you also heard Sue and Gerald saying that it's taking up to 7 days for private and at least 24 hours for DHEC to report their numbers, at least 24 hours. So what that means is the numbers you're hearing are not where we are today. They're where we were 2 days to a week ago. And the real numbers they're just that backlogged in the system. So throwing complications into that is the supply chain that is affecting DHEC and getting the necessary reagents to do the tests so that they can test people and they can have a 24-hour turnaround when they actually have the necessary parts to the test. But they don't have the parts. They're hoping today to get the parts in that they didn't have yesterday. So tomorrow's numbers will, I'm sure, be a whole lot more than 32 for the whole state, which is where they are today. Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones.
When you're done. You're done. Okay, I'm getting some text messages in, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like, with this council's respect, to have the sheriff respond to this. 2 or 3 folks, or 3 actually, have come in, some in favor, some not in favor of curfew. Could the sheriff give us an update?
Okay. Are we through?
Yes.
I wasn't fully through, no, sir. I'm sorry. I thought it was about what I was just saying.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can we, can I suggest we move on through?
Absolutely.
And for IT, I just got a text that Mr. Bozard's microphone's not working. You get it fixed? Yeah, thank you, sir. Back up? Yeah. Thank you. Let's let Mr. Carpenter finish the stream, and then we'll go to questions.
And I apologize. I
No,
was
no, at all. That was
reading and speaking.
I definitely want to hear from Lee. Go ahead, Big.
Sure. It's also important that, as Gerald said, I want to reiterate, our fire crews are out there, our law enforcement are out there, and they're doing their job, but we're not responding them to a medical call. They're responding to calls. They're just not responding to medical calls. And that's critical. I mean, frequently a fireman is the first man on the scene, first man or woman on the scene. But in this case, unless they have to be, we're not putting them in that situation where they're potentially exposed to something that they don't know what they're getting into, especially if they have an unresponsive patient. So all of our public safety are fully engaged, fully out there doing their jobs, but we're also managing the situations as it relates to anything medically related. Well, you know, what else is going on? Various aspects of county government are very engaged, and I want to give you an example over in our economic development office. And what we've been doing is working very closely with our local industries, and daily contacts with all our industry are being made, phone calls going out to them to see where they are, what they need, what we can do to support them. And I can share with you that right now there's not a single closing reported to us of any industry in this county. 5 of them have had some kind of a reduction in force because of having employees come into contact or quarantined. But none of them are shut down. So that's the first thing that people need to understand is industry is still going on. We continue to push out information to them as well. As we receive information from the Department of Commerce, from the federal government, from DHEC, that's related to the workforce, to the work environment, we are making sure that our local industries are getting that information. We've had more than 422 contacts in the last couple weeks just with them as well. We're also assisting them. Several of our industries are critical or essential, and there's a process that they have to go through to be determined to be as such. So we're working with them, Cogsdill, Hengst, Kawashima, and others, to work with them to help them determine their status as an essential industry in the event that the governor may determine that that's necessary. Again, there's no expectation he's going to, but if he did, they needed to know now versus then. So we're working very closely with them. We're also helping them in other ways. One of our local industries, Kawashima, has donated cloth. They had cloth. They wanted to know who they could donate it to so masks could be made. So we made the contact for them to donate the mask to a local sewing group.
Excellent.
Another one of our local industries, GE Appliances, reached out and indicated that they had appliances that they wanted to donate to local human service agencies that needed them. And so we facilitated that transfer. And as a result, Meals on Wheels, Food for the Soul, the United Way's Mobile Nutrition Center, a New Day Transition Housing Center, and others are receiving refrigerators, ranges, freezers that they would not have received, brand new equipment, courtesy of GE and our county staff working to get it to those who needed it as well. We're also helping on the HR side. Some of our industries are small. You know, they're not huge corporations. And so we're helping them understand ramifications for HR law and putting them in contact with the necessary resources so that they can get answers for their own sake as well. On the public information side, you know, I just got to give all the credit in the world to Nathan Tisdale and to Lauren Reeder. And they're both in the room behind me, and I'm sorry that our public can't see those faces. We have created a machine, and I will say that we are better than anyone in the state right now. And I mean better than anyone. Let me tell you why I know we're better than anyone, okay? Just in the last couple weeks, on our social media, we've had 254,000 total impressions of everything we've sent out on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. 254,000. Of those, we've had 95,000 different page views, people looking at our 95,000 looking at our pages. Just our coronavirus webpage alone has had almost 19,000 people go to that webpage. You gotta find it. It's not, you know, it's on our website. It's not its own website. So almost 19,000 people have made the effort to find that webpage. How do we know that we're better than anyone? Well, they put out statistics. You know, this is a world full of numbers, and we know for a fact that we have had 3 times more engagements than the city of Charleston or the city of Greenville on their social media. And we have more engagements than Richland County and Charleston County on social engagement. Those are real numbers. And those aren't based on population. That's the real number, more than the biggest cities and counties in the state. Now, again, we're weeks ahead of them, but they can't catch up to the human people we already have working. This is a race, and once you're ahead, you're not going to lose. They can't overtake you in this kind of a race. We're doing daily update videos. They come out every afternoon at the end of the day, just trying to give a brief update for our citizens of what's happened, what the real information is, and some good news as well. People want to see, and there's a lot of great things going on, and they're catching that and they're putting it out for everyone to see. We're putting out PSAs every day, updating PSAs so people know from kind of the standard of washing hands and social distancing to other more intimate details about the way the disease works, or things that just people won't necessarily know, but we're making sure they do. We're putting out press releases and just social media, just working it hard so people have a way of seeing and knowing what's going on. And then we have our coronavirus hotline. And every day it's manned 12 hours a day. We have generally at least 2 people on there. The school districts has provided us nurses as well, so we can answer routine medical calls and take them off of 911, take them off of doctors as well. And we're getting in dozens and dozens of calls a day coming into that to help people assuage their fears and their concerns. So, members of council, we are doing an amazing job of communicating, of protecting, and providing the support that our citizens need. And with that, that's my report.
I'm going to ask, would you guys mind if I let the call-ins go first, Jimmy? It would be
Sure,
okay?
absolutely.
Let's start with Tom Gardner. Any comments, Tom, or questions?
I just think it's one of those things that it's a day-by-day thing that I think we're doing about as much as we can do considering the situation because it is very fluid. It changes on a day-to-day basis, and I commend all of our staff and all of our first responders, our hospital, everybody that's doing what they're doing. But I think this is going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Connell, Ben?
No additional questions, Mr. Chairman. Just appreciate the updates and grateful to Mr. Jones for getting this update put together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jones.
If I could, going back to text messages, and I'm sure you're calling and share, but Sue Shugard gave a report, this is an open session county council meeting, and she gave an open session report. Some folks did not hear it and one person said, could y'all make that public? Well, it is public. If they couldn't hear it, you can certainly get them a copy.
Or Facebook.
Or maybe post it,
Sure. Well,
her
yes,
words
On
verbatim.
YouTube and
Right.
so on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
Lauren,
for you.
would you do that? Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
I think, Jimmy, just to interrupt, Vic has got ideas about how we can do this better because we're learning how we go along. All right, I'm sorry, Jimmy, go ahead.
Mr. Jones,
I
before you,
think Jimmy still got the phone.
yeah, I have a question for him, Mr. Chairman. Please allow.
I will.
Mr. Jones, I had a question for Vic concerned to what he said before you get to the sheriff, if I could ask.
Absolutely.
All right. Can you just enlighten us about the monetary gifts to the pantries? Because I think you left that one out.
People have been very generous as well, and that's where I am relying on Lauren and those to keep us current on all that and that information out. We've had the Central Carolina Community Foundation made a $10,000 donation to our United Way food pantry to help support feeding in this community. Duke Energy has made a several $1,000 donation to them as well to help support that. There have been other donations coming in, I'm aware. So, and this is money that's needed. An example is on our hotline, we had a senior, a gentleman, call in. He and his wife have no car. I know people find that hard to believe, but we have people in our community that have no car. And he would, as a routine, just go and shop by foot and bring it home. Well, they couldn't. They were just very scared to go out in the public at their age, and they had no food. And so they called us, and the county, we reached out, and in this case, I went to someone, you always go to your strengths, so I called Mr. Snodgrass and asked him if he could help with that. And they did. Their church stepped forward and made something happen, and we're getting these calls, and we're serving as a conduit to give people hope and give people support as they need it, because we have people that are sitting at home like this couple was. They're scared, and they didn't know, they had no food, and God was good, and we were able to take care of them and anyone else that calls.
Amen. Thank
Right,
you.
back to Mr. Jones, sir.
Well, just sort of going, I know we're kind of all over the place a little bit, but I think the meeting's being ran very well. A comment that, did Sue Sugar, did she give us a packet?
Yeah, we're going to get that.
Okay, that packet will be released to the public, correct?
Danny's got it. I'll let Vic handle it.
Okay, well, I'm getting calls on that as well, that they heard that there was a packet, and would that be released to the public?
I believe that the hospital has some confidential information that cannot be released to the public, so it's limited to what we can, but we will release everything that we're able to. Yes, sir.
Good
Very
question. Thank you. Sir. David, please. David Snodgrass.
Sure. Not so much a question, but definitely a comments, and just want to commend Lauren and Nathan, what you guys are doing as one of the two millennials on the council. And I say that I know I'm on the older end of millennials, but there's some studies that put me in the millennials, so I'm going to take it. All right.
You're our closest.
I'm the closest. Yeah. I will. I love what we're doing. If you remember from the survey told us that the majority of our citizens get their news from social media. Now, some may find that scary. In some ways, it is scary. But if we know that, if we put out good information, then I think it's a tool that we have power in that tool. So, great job, guys, and love the update, the videos. I think it really helps clear things up, because in this type of situation, in this small knit town, phone lines get hot with all sorts of misinformation. And so there's one thing I know about Kershaw County is they love their Facebook and they love information. So we just got to make sure they get correct information. So good job, and thank you so much for what you're doing. And also just want to add, as far as what you said about the food banks, I do know that United Way, we're working right now trying to get a coalition of delivery drivers that we're going to work on that tomorrow. Because what they're seeing is people are calling, hey, I need something, but I can't get there, or I'm scared to get out. So I'll look forward to kind of giving you more of an update on that.
Great. Other comments? Mr. Jones, you were going to bring forward the sheriff. Is that all right?
I was. Can I say one thing quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, to folks that are watching, this county council will not hold anything that should be released to the public unless there's some confidential, whether it's medical or whether it's a contractual agreement or an employee issue. We're just not going to do that. And I want the folks that are listening to understand that we're just not going to do that. We will make sure this county has all the information that's available for their safety, and they're well concerned. So I just want all fears with what I'm getting, multiple messages, put it to rest. We got a handle on this. I think Kershaw County, with our great staff here, is one step ahead. And let's just keep moving forward. Thank you.
All right. Sheriff, you want to come up real quick? Lee, good to see you. 6 feet apart. Stay away from Gerald. Good to see you, Sheriff. Any updates from us?
No, we're plugging along. We're
See if we can get that mic hot, please.
trying to keep our guys healthy. As of today, we have 5 deputies that are out just as precaution because they were indirectly in contact with someone who was directly in contact with the virus. So we're taking all precautions. We're doing everything. We're getting a lot of good guidance from Gerald, as we all know. We know as much as we can about it, and I think information's getting out real well. I mean, social distancing is a frequently used term. We're hearing it a lot now, but it means a lot. People can just keep their distance. Kind of where we're at.
Address the issues I had on questions presented to me on the phone about a curfew. Some for, some not. Your position.
Well, I think it's a sad day that we're discussing having to tell people to use common sense and look out for their neighbors, and even having to discuss a curfew. The same kind of people that are willing to wander around, group up, and possibly spread a virus that can kill someone, not the kind of people that's going to obey a curfew. The way a curfew really works is if everybody does it. We're doing it in our county and nobody else is doing it, people still going to go to other counties, bring things out. In my opinion, the biggest thing we need right now is social distancing. Our guys are out there trying to enforce that. That's been out. You know, we're dispersing crowds. We're trying to keep track. We're getting messages left and right. Every time somebody sees a crowd, they're calling us. We're responding to it. The people who are planning parties, whether they know it or not, we know about their parties. People are sending us information about the parties. We're there before they are. So I think the biggest thing that this curfew could do is separate people. We're already doing it.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Sheriff. Take care. Be safe out there, all right? All right, back to you, Mr. Carpenter. You have the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the gist of our updates. You know, the county still, our buildings remain closed to the public, but our services remain active and going. Phone calls, email, internet, anything you can do online through phone or through email. If not, a phone call, and we'll do what we can as soon as we can. But we are still here, keeping the wheels of the county going.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to close this just with a quick issue that a number of us have talked about doing another called meeting, and not to alarm the public, but to keep the public informed and to keep this team up here informed and pulling on the trailer as horses in the same direction. So I'm looking for a call meeting next week, but let's stay flexible as to the timing. And maybe we have one within 24 hours given events that we cannot foresee. So I'll objectively put it up as, say, Thursday. It's the end of the week, but not the end of the week. It gives us a pretty good summary on where we are. But I'm going to rely on Vic Carpenter to tell us when it's best. And we'll stay in touch. But the rules is we have to do it in 24 hours out to give everybody notice. And we'll follow the rules. But the best rule is, like the sheriff said, stay at home. If you're not doing things that are not essential, keep your distances. Any closing comments? I'll just go around the horn real quick, starting with our call-ins. Mr. Gardner, you'll be first. Go ahead and unmute.
No report.
Mr. Connell, sir.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. David? Good. Okay, good. Mr. Tucker?
Mr. Chairman, I have two things. One's real quick. Reverend Bennett, who is the chairperson of the president of the Concerned Clergies, just texted in, said he's watching. I think we had a little over 200 viewers last time, Ms. Lauren, probably triple today. There's a lot of people watching us in and out of county. He just said that anything that he needs to get out to the churches or through the Concerned Clergies, please reach out to him. He is available. So people are wanting to help and making sure that we get through this and we win at the end. The other thing I want to talk about that we didn't bring up, Mr. Chairman, was the memorandum for an ad hoc task force.
Excellent, thank you.
And I want to get on that. So we're not going just yet. And if I can have the floor for a minute.
That's why I called on you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, with that being said, everyone knows the state that we're in. I have had contact with the chairman. And let me first, by preferencing this to one of my other colleagues, Councilman Jones, when this epidemic started going around the coronavirus, Councilman Jones had made a couple of comments in our earlier council meetings that we need to be vigilant and concerned about our local businesses. So what I'm asking the chairman to do today is to sign an ad hoc committee so we can study how we can assist these folks. And let me give you a little what this subject, what I'm talking about. We're going to assess and supporting and sustaining current businesses, agencies in the crises. And what this ad hoc committee, and the chairman he wrote it, so he can tell you more than I can about it. I just read it. It's going to challenge this ad hoc committee to go out and see what do we have locally, what do we have statewide, and what do we have federal-wide that's available to support our businesses and agencies here in Kershaw County. They will put together that information. They will have recommendations to come back to full council, that at that time we can vet it as council members, and then we can vote it up or down. And I'm going to tell you with all my heart, it's going to be fast moving, it's going to be very swift and deliberate, because we don't have time to waste. We're already behind the 8 ball if we're going to do anything to keep our local business afloat, because most people are like me. This is my livelihood, which I am telling you now, I will not qualify for this, because if I was, I wouldn't be heading it up. So my name will not be in the hat, but I am a small business owner here in Kershaw County. And I say that because I've had a lot of people call me for concern, and also stressing their concerns and their worries. And when you take a small business person out, you don't just take out their business, you take their life from them, especially if they're, folks that they're personal, what I call, doing business as, they don't have no franchise or something like that. They just, their retirement is their business. This condition, if we don't reach out and try to help some folks, no matter what state that's in, would put people in the graveyard just like the virus can possibly do. And I say that not to be exaggerating. I'm just telling you it means that much. So we've got a lot of work to do. The chairman's wrote about a 8-page memo here. You have a copy of it. You should have it on your email or on your desktop right there before you. And I'm going to let the chairman give you a little bit more information, and I'll be happy to chime back in, Mr. Chairman.
It's not a member of the council has not talked to me about our small businesses. And most of you have also mentioned agencies that are dependent on public welfare and the public desire to help, such as you heard Mr. Snodgrass talk about. So we decided to form an ad hoc group, which is the authority of this body, that is charged to evaluate the circumstances of our small businesses, our nonprofits and agencies, and their ability to just survive and then recover, and periodically to advise this council on the state of business and nonprofit health in the community, and to propose financial policy and legislative solutions. The task force is directed to address these features with a goal of reporting back to the council not later than the 10th of April, which is our next regularly scheduled meeting, but you can come back sooner, with the main focus being to leverage state and federal funds, but with the recognition that time is of the essence and the financial burden to our businesses and our agencies and organizations has only begun to accelerate and deepen. It's really hurtful for our people. And we do this to achieve what might be done with what very little we have. Now, I'll quit reading for a moment, and then I'll get to the composition. One of the reasons we've got to move out is all of us know how bureaucratic processes, such as the small business agency, and then in Congress has yet to pass that bill. You called me up last night at midnight, Mr. Tucker. They didn't pass it. They got to go into the House again. So, Congress is moving at a snail's pace, and the needs of our county only get bigger and bigger. So we've asked this task force to address state and federal funding and see if we can expedite those things. And secondly, even to look at innovative solutions within our own budget. We handle tornadoes, and as you've heard me say again, hurricanes and floods. And now we got a plague that's threatening our very economy and the business and livelihood of our people. And we, the county, ought to be able to do something about that. I'll put the letter out for Mr. Tucker to vet tomorrow in his first meeting, but the composition includes everyone in the county by keeping it as small as possible as not to spread a virus or create a danger to those participating, but a small group of representatives that can then expand throughout the county. We have 2 members from the Kershaw County Council. That's Vice Chairman Sammy Tucker, who I've asked to lead this, Councilman Ben Connell and David Snodgrass. Supporting Sammy, Councilman Jeffrey Graham of the city of Camden. And I hear that Mel Pearson might come along, Mayor Melissa Emmons from Elgin, Ken McCaskill from Bethune, and we're looking to Amy Kynard to give us help with her linkages into small businesses throughout the county. Helping them will be the entire county staff led by Mr. Carpenter, and we'll see where this goes. We have got to get this done quickly and turn it around because people just need our help. We're willing to put our resources to include monetary, but that will take an ordinance and that will be somewhat downstream of this point. But I ask you all to push the federal and state systems and give feedback to your councilmen here represented as fast as possible where you see roadblocks or where we might be able to assist you. The first step, in addition to the meeting from Mr. Tucker, will be a letter from this organization to our governor laying it out, and I will lead it to the writing skills of Mr. Carpenter to write it because I'm too emotional about it, and he'll do it in plain text so that it can be actionable. So that's where we are. Mr. Tucker, did I pretty well hit most of those points?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And, I just want to add that this is doable. We've got that short window again, but it just means all hands on deck where I'm from, which is the Navy. And we're gonna step sharply and march smartly. That's what we're going to do.
Coming from the Navy, those are strong words. Mr. Bozard, please. Mr. Jones, thank you for bringing us together today. What you got, sir?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you so much. Councilman Tucker, I want to thank you for those words about this. I don't know if it's stimulus or whatever it is to support our businesses and folks who are laid out, but I do have some comments I want to make on it.
Yes,
and I think everyone in here will agree with this. I am 100% in favor of using county surplus funds to help small businesses and people who have lost their jobs in this extreme emergency. We can use at least $1 million to aid small businesses and people out of work in this extreme emergency. The county needs to move very quickly to make a minimum of $1 million of the county's unused surpluses available to small businesses and organizations. I'm careful about when I say organizations, they have to be really be vetted to make sure they qualify, that provide food and shelter to citizens affected. Only those who provide food and shelter to citizens affected by this emergency. The county should use its emergency power, transparency, fairly and quickly. An emergency, and I know you folks agree with me on this, an emergency does not mean a lack of transparency. I would object to voting or discussing any proposal I have not seen at least a day before it is discussed and acted on, and which is not available to the public at least 24 hours or 1 day before it is discussed or acted on. We do not need secrecy. I don't think anyone on this council is planning to do that. I'm just saying to the public, we are not going to. We do not need secrecy to replace transparency. So, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the way y'all brought this before this body tonight or today, and I look forward at our next meeting to seeing just where we're at. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
And indeed, we're required by the law to bring it in as an ordinance on something of that magnitude. So it will certainly be out there in front. I see we have no further comments. Can I have a motion that we adjourn?
Make a motion we adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Snodgrass, a second.
Second.
From Mr. Tucker. And,
that guy.
and before we adjourn, I just say that we had some good guidance from St. Paul about self-discipline. You heard it from the sheriff and all of us up here that we're in the defense of a long football game. We don't even know what quarter we're in, but we know we got a long, hard slog. We have the Lord, we have each other, and we've got good guidance from our hospital and support from this great county staff. With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by first from Mr. Connell. Sir, say aye if you agree.
I vote yes.
All right.
I vote yes.
And Mr. Gardner.
Yes.
Okay. And all present, so signify. Raise your hands. And we are unanimous and we adjourn. God help us all.
Thank you.